straight away.
Sure. Done.
Are we on record? Are we recording?
We're formally on record. Last time I learned with you, Ben, that there's no point in like not pressing record straight away, because we never know what we might miss as a like little nugget or a big nugget, so to speak. So episode 21, Design Company Podcast, welcoming both Mo and Ben to the episode. And I myself am today in Camber Sands, my office space. I'm literally hiding in these little bushes to have a better audio quality and not get that wind noise.
Wow.
But without further ado, Ben, why don't you tell us who you are in context of business and specifically any sort of company building things that you've done in the past?
Yes, so I've been very, very blessed in my life to have been and built several companies which have in their time been very iconic. One's been in education and training. This is in tech training. Another one's been in hospitality. There's one that was in technology, cybersecurity, and just tons which I can never remember because they've kind of like been sold and we've moved on to the next whatever it is that takes our fancy. So yes, just worked across the board in different areas. Is that good enough? I understand you want to read my mind.
Absolutely, always. And in some sense, what design company software and the model is about is getting more into the minds of all the people inside the company. And here, I assure you, we're in a good company with my brother Mo and yourself. With design company software, we actually ask people across these 7 areas that are on Mo's screen, which is purpose, people, systems, innovation, products, money, and growth. And that actually serves us as a bit of a structure for these particular podcast conversations to ask you at least one question in each area.
Ooh. Oh, I love this. Sounds like a game.
So
the
way exactly. So the way we're looking to mine your mind is by actually asking you a little bit of social synergistic questions around those 7 areas and see what we can get at and get to. So the first question from me, we'll go round. Mo, let's do it like this: rounds, 2 questions in each area off the cuff.
Sounds good. I already know mine. I have a very good one that Ben will enjoy.
That's the rules. I just made them up. Let's go, and we
don't
don't have to stick to them. Yeah, you get points for juicier the answer, the better. Okay. So the first question is around purpose. What has been your purpose in building and exiting different companies, Ben?
Very good question. Love it. So actually, I never had a purpose to build companies. In fact, I would have just been very happy making money going up the corporate ladder. I don't have a problem with jobs. It was just that I had a new
director
at Kodak who was not a very nice person, and
Kodak is actually boosted by 1,900% today because they got into making all these chemicals for COVID-19. Have you guys seen that?
Should have kept my shares from way back.
Yes, you could have been rich now again.
Oh my goodness.
Sorry about the interjection there, but that just triggered me there.
That's amazing. Anyway, my director changed to someone who wanted to cut up all the other directors at the expense, of the business. He didn't care. And this was in the late 80s when we hit another major recession. It was just very horrible. And because I wouldn't play his games included, Ben, I don't want you to speak to the salespeople when they're on the 3rd floor. Now we're in marketing at the time, and the salespeople need to know what innovations we're working on, and I need to know the feedback from the customers in order to create more innovation. So I would go down to the second floor or say, hey guys, I understand you want to talk to me here. Let's go down to the second floor. So there's me ducking and diving to avoid this guy's crazy rules. And he realized this, and so I needed to go. I said to him, well, you know, if I go, because I had to speak to the HR director, that my entire team will leave. So they paid me off to leave quietly. They said, would you go if I said, yeah. If we gave you this money, would you go? I said, yeah, that's no problem. I'd love to do that. Who wants to work for a crazy director, right? So I then took a paper round to think what I'd like to do next. And I applied for a job to sort out some of these accountancy software. I didn't understand the operating system. The guy said, oh, you know, we'll have you for 3 months. And at the end of 3 months, he offered me a job. I said, no, I think your business is going to go down within 2 years, having worked here, but I'll employ somebody else for you. And from there, I went into software training and education. And then contracting for tech. And that's where I started properly building businesses. I had a few goes earlier. Prior to that, my first job was in admin and support, but I learned tech there. And I had some customers at the time who I was doing private work for, but I didn't understand sales. I didn't understand marketing. So I didn't lose money, but I didn't know how to make it bigger at the time. So over time, I learned the sales, and in the Kodak company, I learned all about marketing. And that's when, if you like, my contracting and then business started kind of taking effect. So I haven't answered, like, why did I do it? It was because it just happened. It wasn't like I woke up one morning and had a burning desire to run businesses. I didn't have a good self-image. So it was like, yeah, I'm safe in a job.
It's quite synergistic, Ben, the topics you just brought up, because actually my next question was going to be around this area. So I believe one of the areas you're quite well known for is this idea of social magnetism, right? You know, being able to build healthy relationships with others, but that also starts with healthy relationship with self. So my question to you is both purpose and people related in the context of sales and marketing. How can we purposefully approach relationship building with individuals in the context of business development, partnerships, etc.? Yes.
Yeah, sales and marketing. So remember, I started out as a lowly admin person in this company. And what they found after a while was that a lot of the support calls would come to purchasing and admin. They didn't want to speak to the tech guys, because the tech guys would say, oh, that's on a need-to-know basis to the customers. And I would just give them full information and say, well, actually, you just need one of these. And they would say, oh, I heard it was £150 or £3,000. I said, no, you just need to do it like this. And so after time, I started getting all these calls. My sales manager at the time thought I'd be really good in sales. So he started training and mentoring me in that area. And over time, I became very, very good at it. Now, initially, I was terrible, I have to say, because, again, I didn't have a good self-image. And as part of the training, I would book appointments for the other salespeople. And they found that I get kind of like 100% hit rate. So how come Ben could do that? So maybe he could do it for himself. And in the initial sales that I was doing, I would lose all these big orders. I learned strategy so that even though I lost the big orders, I'd keep in touch with the people, the customers, and they would find that they'd been oversold by people who actually didn't know systems. I did, my degree is in computer science, and I learned all the tech stuff that was in the company. So I was literally giving amazing value. I just didn't know how to sell. And in fact, my manager, because the director wanted to fire me, my manager would give me these big deals and he would close it while I learned how to develop myself. He doesn't remember it because I spoke to him probably a year ago, got in touch with him. He doesn't remember. He said, no, Ben, you were great. And the reason was you were constantly giving value to people, even if it meant you were losing the deal. Now, more than that, I would try and solidify this connection with people. I learned that if the director saw nice letters about me and customers writing nice things about me, that he was happy. So at the time, I was just trying to keep my job. So every time somebody said something nice to me, whether I was in the transition period of purchasing and admin and sales, or fully in sales, I would say, that's really cool. My director doesn't really like me at the moment. Would you mind just writing a letter about how you think I helped you? So I have this really thick folder of customers I've had over time. And it was purely that. I have a lot of sales skills today, but at the time I didn't. So the only thing I could do was just give them tons and tons of value beyond actually the business. One customer, I was playing chess, like a move a day. Another customer, his kids suffer from eczema. I suffer from eczema. I would be sharing information that I learned to get better because the doctors were just terrible at helping. So it was a lot more than just salesy kind of communication. There was also another aspect of the business, because we had old tech. And this is even before I was in the sales department. The old tech was just taking up storage space. And some of my suppliers would actually also ask me if I'd heard of XYZ stock. Now, I knew we had a lot, and my director once asked if I would be able to sell it. He said, he's just trying to help me out because I was very poor. I was literally, as Jason knows, I was eating porridge and cornflakes for dinner and breakfast. And so I don't know how, but I sold everything that was secondhand in the store through, again, just great connections with some of the suppliers. So who would have guessed that the suppliers would also end up being customers? Yeah. So that's the sales side, Mo. In terms of marketing, sales and marketing often cross over with each other. I know there's very different marketing aspects. So when I was headhunted to be at Kodak, I was in the marketing department. Now, I didn't really know anything about marketing, so I went and did some long distance learning and used what I was doing in that department as part of my thesis, if you like. So I learned marketing while I was there, and I learned, all about strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and began to understand how the competitors were doing that, selling their products. So at the time, there's a product called document image processing, and that's essentially getting, a paper document. Well, hold on. Paper document, and putting that paper document, I should lose my background really to make the paper show, to digitize it. And so that's where I became a specialist and was in charge of the team to create those products. Now, we had products that competitors who were doing much better than us. So again, I needed to get in the field. I needed to communicate with our salespeople and work out where they had a competitive advantage or why they liked using Kodak, even though our product may not have been as good as their products. Once you understand that, and this is where I really started learning about benefits and features and just going after the customers. These are corporate customers. Yeah, these are not like little startups. They're not people who've just decided to be an entrepreneur. These are big corporations, and working out where their pain was and simply working on, okay, I can give you the benefits, and then I can teach the sales guys the benefits, but also where I'm saving their money, where I'm making their money as a result of our products, and why our product was making and saving more money for our customers than our competitors, even if our competitors had more features than we did. Because at the end of the day, and this is a really weird and aspect. I had a friend who I had become a director with us at the education training company. This is fast forwarding another decade, and we were doing this big contract for Rolls-Royce. It was hard because none of us had any sleep for 2 or 3 days, and one of those days he just burst out, just threw a fit and got very angry. The managing director at the time just calmed him down and, you know, said, what's the problem? And he said, I don't understand. And no disrespect to Ben, but I am cleverer than Ben. And he was. He had a scholarship to Cambridge and Oxford. He was just a really super guy. And I said to him, I know, that's why I want you on our team, because you're just really innovative and great at creating products. He said, but I don't understand. Why is it that it's my product and yet everyone's buying it from Ben and not me? I can't sell it, but Ben can. Yeah. And it was purely in the marketing and moving over into the sales. I was only ever interested in what the customers wanted. They didn't care that his product was incomplete. They just wanted one part of the product that would help them do something, and everything else they just never cared about. And I just said, well, it's really simple. All I'm doing is working with what the customers want, not what you think they want. Does that, I don't know whether I've spoken too much, because the marketing is a lot more than, you know, strengths, weaks, opportunities, and threats. No, it's doing with cash cows and this whole cycle of products.
It's you know, you're obviously showing that you're thinking quite holistically, because if you look at the model, right, you've already gone from people through growth and products, and so you touched a bunch of those areas. So my question is really, what is the kind of core thing that gets people to buy from businesses in your experience that's very, very practical? And perhaps it's that thing that you just mentioned around, you know, they just care about that one thing and sort of amplify that to them. But, you know, see if there's, you know, a different answer to that explicit question.
Number one, if they to really buy from you, is they have to like you. They really have to like you. Sales in the 80s was different to sales in the 90s, which is very different to 2000s, and which is very different today. So today, if you just go and tell somebody they need to buy something and here's the benefit, and without this benefit, they're messed up, nobody's going to buy. Yeah, people have the internet. They'll do like a lot of kind of you know, due diligence on the products. They'll compare them, they'll look at prices, a whole bunch of stuff, and they'll go to comparison sites, which was never around in the 80s and 90s or even the early 2000s. So they'll go to these sites and they'll see. So they have to like you, and it's a much slower sales cycle. Now, remember right at the beginning in the 80s, where I'm in sales and I was rubbish at it. It wasn't just because I didn't know about closing. It's because I had no social skills. I didn't know how to connect with people. And so it was purely, I had to develop the relationships over the time so that people would trust me and learn that actually what Ben's saying is correct. And he doesn't make anything out of giving me this great advice. He doesn't make anything just by helping me. And of course, there are a lot of people who just kind of sucked me dry out of information and would go somewhere else, even if they did like me. That might have been because the person they were buying from was their brother or sister or uncle. Everything can be perfect, but you'll still lose the deal because you don't know what's going on behind the scenes. And that connection, I think, is very important today. So I think it was in the 2000s, I used to teach people about 7 or 8 touches on average. If you don't already have a connection built. So you have to connect with them 7 or 8 times. First of all, you meet them at an event, you send them a message, hey, it was great to meet you. You might take a selfie with them if they're into social media, get their permission, write nice things about them in the social media. So this is in my TED talk, by the way, on social magnetism. Then you'll write to them about something that you've spoken about. Either they're a Comic-Con fan. Everyone's a fan of superheroes at the moment, yeah? So you could send pictures. So these are your 7 touches or 9 touches. Now today it's a little bit more. It's more about 13 or 14 now. When you're dealing with, which generation are we on? Generation X? What?
It's one of those letters,
I can't remember.
XYZ,
Yeah,
something like that. Yeah.
But you can't, as one of them said, it's harder for you guys to bullshit us. So they're just so one, and so much of them, like, even if you tell them something, they'll go to YouTube and learn about it anyway. So
yeah, I have a 13-year-old son, and is like, always prodding my, reasoning for why I tell him anything. Yeah, it's like.
And then they'll learn about it. So they really must like and respect you. And today in sales, you may have the funnels, you may have a whole bunch of other aspects. You may have written books, you may sell from stage, but at the end of the day, if they don't like you, then it's not going to work, or it might work initially. So at the moment, because of the epidemic we've currently got, people are scared about money, and they're buying anything that they think will help them, just out of fear. So every time I see a recession, things like network marketing has a boost. Everyone is then sharing their products.
Fear buying, yeah.
Well, and they're signing up to be in these network marketing companies. I'm not saying that they're good or bad. I'm just saying that they're signing up because they need money. And the problem is they're losing money because they've not gone through half the things that many of us have gone through: sales, marketing, branding, just learning to connect with people. And they're getting into business. Does that make sense? What I'm saying?
Totally. What I really enjoy, Ben, is I've been having a couple follow-up questions in mind, and as Jason said, you're quite holistic in your approach, so it covers a lot of those follow-ups as well. So if I may, actually, if we're on the topic of kind of people going into systems innovation, you mentioned the epidemic, which I was going to ask about. You talked about having these multiple touch points, which, yes, I agree, right? It's all about building familiarity and going from stranger to, okay, this is someone that I can trust enough to open up and actually share a bit more about what my current priorities are. You mentioned something there, which is, meeting people organically at an event, and, then kind of taking that connection further, following up, building familiarity. But if we're kind of in between systems and innovation, how can we, if we're looking to systematically expand our network of people that we might be working with, what's kind of a systematic and innovative way in a time of COVID to reach out and build and further new relationships within a context where these organic kind of first meetings, aren't that possible anymore, or at least are drastically reduced?
Now, here is a myth which will help you a little bit here, Mo. And the myth is that you can only network at networking events and meet customers at networking events. I have met customers in restaurants. I have met customers in my hobbies. So I love dancing. I go to dance events, and many of them have either signed up with the tech company I used to work with, or they've invested in currently my property companies. You don't need to be at networks or parties to meet people. Within the epidemic, so for example, when you go to a shop, and when you have to stand 1 meter or 2 meters away from somebody in front of you, they're your audience. They are stuck with you until somebody waves them into the building. 2 meters away. It's not creepy. They don't feel that you're encroaching on them, and you can start up a communication. I have met 4 people like that. 4 people just standing in the line, just say, oh, hey, and it's very simple to start conversations. How are you being impacted by the epidemic? Oh, blah, 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 blah. Do you think it's a real thing? Or, do you think it's a G5 kind of thing? Or are you like, you just create this conversation. You don't care about G5 or any of those other aspects for this conversation. You're just interested in them and who they are, their perspective. Now, from there, you move on to, so before lockdown, what kind of stuff did you do? And they tell you about themselves. And so you create this connection and communication. Now, obviously, there are things you can do to accelerate it, because actually you somehow need to keep in contact. So somewhere along the way, you say, are you in social media? Yes, no. If they're in social media, it'd be lovely to continue this conversation on Instagram or Facebook or TikTok, if you like talking ticks, whatever they're interested in. And that's where you start, and then everything else builds up from there. So that, I don't know whether that's innovative enough for you, just talking to people.
I just met a guy swimming in the sea here in Camber Sands. First of all, I shouted at him because everyone sort of struggles to get into the sea because it's a bit cold, or relatively perceived as cold. And I just shouted at him, I was like, let's go, champ. Let's go, champ. And then he dipped himself in, and I was like, yeah, well done. And then asked him, how are you doing and all that stuff. And he was like, how's your year? And the guy said he was a barber for 15 years and he's been looking to move into IT recruitment for, 3-4 years. And finally, the pandemic has pushed him into that because he lost his barber job. I was like, great. And so, that was potential contact to keep in touch with because we're in IT and all that kind of stuff. So it's another example of a situation in real world right now.
So I love what you're saying, Jason. Now, the thing is, you may not necessarily be in recruitment, and you may not have contacts in recruitment, but I do. And you could say to him, listen, if you want some other people already in recruitment and would like some tips from them, I've got a great friend called Ben who knows a number of people who do IT recruitment who are personal friends of him. Would you like to be put in contact with them? Now, you've created a much more solid contact now, because yeah, sure, who wouldn't want that? Is he likely to give you his I'm sure you've worked it out anyway, but I'm just for our podcast listeners sharing how to build on that, even if you cannot help them or add value in that meeting. You have in your network already, hopefully, people who could help them.
Yeah, and I think that's a very, very key point to remember, that we can't necessarily directly help people firsthand. Like, I don't have necessarily solution for every single thing in the world in practice. I might have it like somewhere here in my head. It might be in my subconscious, so I'm not aware of it yet. But somebody does 2-3 steps away on LinkedIn, and a guy that I know knows a guy that knows a guy, and that's always helpful, and things do come back in some sort of karmic way.
I'd like to share another innovative way that people have been networking. It's absolutely amazing, and goes beyond just joining groups in Facebook or LinkedIn, because that's another way you can get customers. And just start supporting other people's posts. Jason, I don't know if you've noticed, but your interview with me has I noticed when I went to your channel, I thought it was just a podcast and be an anchor or something, but I went to your YouTube channel, and I noticed that we had a lot more views after the first day than any of the other podcasts you posted in X amount of time. Now, why is that? It's because, like yourself, I'm constantly engaging with people on my Facebook. I'm going to their posts, I'm liking them, I'm writing a comment on them. Even if I don't care about it, they might show me a picture of their cat. Now, I'm allergic to cats. I don't like cats, but I will go and say, oh, that was cute. I'm allergic to cats, but I like the picture and it made me laugh. You know, very simple things like that. So what do you think they're doing in return when I post? They're having a look at
returning the favor. Yeah,
exactly.
Mm.
And I'm coming up in their posts because when you're
because the algorithms are matching.
correct,
Yeah.
yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So by people not even saying happy birthday to people in their social media, they're losing out on connecting with people.
Yeah.
Yeah, whether that's LinkedIn or Facebook. Now, in Facebook, I tend to know every one of those people who are my friends on Facebook. So I'm making relevant comments to their lives. I know that they ride horses or they've got cats or dogs, or I know that they've just got married or had a baby or somebody's passed away. I know their perspectives on coronavirus, you know, all that stuff from what they're posting. And I will make relevant posts to them, or I'll make private posts to them if I feel that I disagree with something. This is something else in social media. I don't understand. Why do people try and embarrass other people in social media? Yeah, you're losing customers and you're losing connection. All right, back to this really innovative way to meet people. So there's a guy I met in LinkedIn. His name's Dove, right? And he would connect with iconic people in LinkedIn, and he would then invite them to a Zoom meetup. And he'd specifically match people who he think would be interesting with each other. He said, this is not for selling. I will not be sharing any of my stuff unless you want me to. And he would literally ask everybody there to introduce themselves and share about their business. From that, I've met quite a few connections. Isn't that interesting? Who are now my friends today. I met someone who has just joined the Gary V team. And I mentioned my TED talk, and she said, oh, I might put this in front of Gary V because that would get a whole bunch of views. But that is a relationship that has developed. It just didn't. It started with that Zoom connection that Dove did, and any of us can do that. Any of us can connect to people. We have friends on LinkedIn, and we can say, "Hey, I just want to invite a bunch of you who I think would enjoy this conversation. And if you get anything out of it, great. That's brilliant." Some of the people didn't connect with everyone, but they suggested people that they would like to meet, and all of us, with our connections, have been able to send people their way. For example, I'm not interested in Bitcoin. Yeah, I just think the whole thing is a bit crazy, having come from a security perspective. But I can connect people who love Bitcoin together. Very, very, very simple things that we can do. People might have a religious perspective. I may not be interested in that religion, but I can connect those people who love that and worship in that way together.
No.
It doesn't hurt me. So it's a great. Here's one that doesn't involve business. So I'm a member through a friend of a comedy group. They've put it all in Zoom, right? So I've met more people in their Zoom comedy shows. A few more people asked to be my friend today. Isn't that wonderful? Now, I don't know their background. I don't know anything about them, but I know that a lot of people who do comedy also have another business somewhere, and they're just kind of learning about it. Isn't that fantastic? And now I can build my if I still need customers in business, I can build it like that, create all the value to them, whether it results in business or not. And maybe one does, maybe it doesn't, but the point is looking at giving them value, helping them build their own economy. And if that helps you, great. And if it doesn't help you, also great.
Reminds me when I was getting into music production in my early 20s in a sort of more professional way. We printed off these demo CDs, and then we're going out to these open mic nights. And I made a habit of handing out 3 demo CDs per night, at least, to people that sort of caught my attention. And the way I would do that is I would hand the CD and I would make a specific remark to them and say, like, commend them or compliment them on something that I particularly noticed in their performance. I said, "Oh, that was amazing how you delivered those raps in Cantonese language." There was a girl called Mylene Klaas who's like a concert pianist, but she did some rapping. And what happened is like a sort of semi-famous piece where she then came on next day on TV, and somebody asked her, "I heard you've been offered a production deal after your performance." I was like, that was me. That was me saying, "Come into our studio, let's produce a rap record for you." But we ended up actually connecting up with a guy who came into our studio and ended up signing up a record label deal with Bad Boy Records as one of the subsidiaries there. And it was like literally through that kind of complimenting people and handing out demo CDs and inviting them to the studio as a call to action. I had no idea what I was doing back then, but it was like, if I introspect, that was like perfect approach as a sort of like intuitive. Yeah.
And nobody can, and people can still do that online, you know, give away their free ebooks or whatever it is that people have.
Yeah.
So
it costs nothing to compliment people, especially like specifically to say, "Hey, I noticed that thing that you said in your post," because a lot of posts are like quite sort of litanies of text, and you can pull out one specific phrase and literally use that and say that I really appreciate that, and here is something that you might enjoy for free. So in terms of products, then what should we know about products, Ben, that we don't?
What should we know about products that we don't? I don't know what you know about products that you don't.
Tell us, what's the most important thing to know about products in business?
That they work. That they're not going to mess up people's lives.
What does it mean for the product to work? Is it like, as you mean functionally or psychologically?
What's the most important thing about a product? That it's going to help somebody. That's it. And you just got to find the people that it's going to help. Either through, you know, here's the way your marketing is helpful, through feedback, by giving your demo CD away to people to give you feedback on your music, or maybe your free ebook will give people an aspect of perhaps an online product, and just say, "Look, I'd love it if you can give me some feedback on this." I think there's an issue with free ebooks, by the way, because I get given a load of these and I just don't have time to read them. Just like I really want to help people there, but I just can't do that with a free ebook. So I'm not sure it's such a great giveaway unless you're trying to help people make money or solve something in their life. So I wouldn't give these things just to anybody. Just choose the right people to give them to. Yeah, for me, our product's got to solve. I think it's pretty obvious. Everyone knows this. A product's got to solve a problem that people really care about and is costing them their health, their connections, their relationships, or their finances.
There's something intrinsic in the design company model that people sit directly above products, and there's a kind of direct correlation that, you know, between people and products connection, that's sort of like almost like equal and opposite. So that's just kind of side note. Mo, you're next.
Mo, I didn't understand anything that Jason just said. Could you help explain it to me?
Well, I think it was more the visual kind of yin yang with various air design company, you know, being that products are great, but they don't exist outside of people. And that, as you said, Ben, ultimately it's all about solving a problem experience.
One way to use the design company model is to ask, for example, a question: how does our system help us generate more money? Or which people are using which products and how? Or how does innovation that we're creating drive growth? You know, so the opposites are somewhat complementary to each other. Or how are people doing the innovation? Or how are systems impacting on product performance, or, you know, value, whatever, all that kind of stuff.
So very, very kind of marketing style questions. to develop?
The model serves as a sort of way to prod the thinking, but also just kind of as a more playful way to actually explore the business world and realm of any given business.
I would call it a simple but effective, like, I don't want to say simple in the sense of simple in a reductive way, but really as in distilling complexity down to first principles and providing a simple way to introspect that's kind of accessible to everyone without you needing to have a management degree, if that makes sense.
Right.
You know, I'm sure in your time, Ben, you've seen a lot of people that are like, you know, I mean, we love consultants, you know, we love everyone, but obviously, you know, the people that are coming into a company and just like having a bunch of buzzwords in management speak, that doesn't really speak fundamentally to a person's reality, and that kind of prevents them from taking part in the change. And so that's really what we're aiming for. It's really like, you know, being able to bring people together and say, okay, you know, how can we just like get things down to brass tacks or first principles, and then move forward.
It's very interesting you say that, Mo, because when you were talking, it triggered the going back to the director change I had at Kodak, to this director who would go to board meetings and he would just confuse everybody with three-letter abbreviations. The RSA connected to the X25 is not really working in the MMR to work with the SAT for the, and I would then explain what he said, which sounded like total nonsense, probably why he wanted me out, by the way. But he was literally like some of these consultants confusing the other directors. It was interesting to me that the other directors never said, we don't understand what you're saying. And I don't know whether you find that with consultants, whether people say to them, actually, I don't understand what you're saying or how that's helping my business.
So actually, that's a really great comment that you made, Ben, and it's kind of a point I want to riff on, right? I think a lot of people today are ultimately kind of trying to create an image. And so personally, I go for the opposite, which is anti-fragility. So, you know, if I don't know something, I'm more than happy to just humbly say, okay, can you tell me more? You know, can I learn? Because otherwise what happens if you're trying to build this image of perfection, that you know everything, that it's all good, ultimately you lose out and stuff, ultimately you get left behind, and you know, ultimately you're just not growing as fast as you could.
Yeah, a bit like me saying to Jason earlier, well, actually, I have no clue what you mean by people sitting on the products. It just sounds like I'm sitting on a chair or something, and you then explaining it. So I guess, yeah. But why is it people don't challenge them and say to them, you know, we're paying you a lot of money and I have no clue what you're saying?
I think that I can take that on quite nicely. Somebody once said to me, this is a environmentalist, and I'm standing here in lovely Camber Sands bushes, which is beautiful environment. But this environmentalist guy moved into becoming a mortgage advisor. And I said, Gareth, why are you moving into mortgage advisory? And he said to me, money's in the jargon, Jason. Money's in the jargon. More jargon you construct, the more money you make. But actually what we're doing is we're de-jargoning entire science of management to make it accessible to someone like my son, 13-year-old Ernie, who will probably be the next one for us to interview because of setting up a company with him. And he understands this model where I say to him, hey, every business has a purpose. It serves certain people. It has a team inside, runs to certain process or system, has to have something innovative, creates a product that sells for money, which should be a little bit more than what it takes to make the product. And eventually people, you know, by selling more, you grow the business and serve back to serving more people and so on. And you make it a circle, go around and round. And my son goes, great, I understand that, like in a quick sentence, as opposed to having to have some sort of mini executive MBA to even start having a conversation.
So I understand what you're saying. And it's not my interview because I know you're interviewing me, but I didn't understand.
It is your interview.
I didn't understand how your answer was answered. You know, why don't people say they don't understand what the management consultant has said to them? So I get that there's money in the jargon, but why don't people say,
all
I
right,
don't
yeah.
understand your
So
jargon?
there's a fear of authority. Yeah. So this sounds like an authority because they understand the language. They wrote the language. The authority is the author of the language. So they come in, they sound smart, and the other people, because the fear of looking stupid or fear of some sort of authority, they don't really speak back. And that's, in my experience, brought a lot of mega corporations into this huge change fatigue, where they're literally given up on majority of consultancies because every single consultancy brings in their own specific jargon, which talks about these 7 areas in a very, very contrived language, and then 6-figure, 7-figure, and 8-figure up the entire company. And then another consultancy comes in and re-jargons everything to another jargon, whereas people understand these words here very simply without needing a sort of dictionary to carry around.
I'll give you another.
Did I answer that at all?
Yes, you're saying that they're scared of looking stupid, I think is what you're saying, in front of somebody who's an authority. I being an educator myself, yeah. I used to remove all the jargon and break things down so that very complicated internal tech like memory management and how that works within a computer system, you could simplify the explanation into very, very like, how do you make a curry? And this is how this works. What I don't understand is people would rather throw tons of money at people who they don't understand to give them solutions that they don't understand and doesn't help them, because they never understood the solution in the first place. The consultant goes and says to them, look, the reason why it hasn't worked is because you haven't implemented it properly. But how could they implement it properly if they didn't understand it in the first place?
Yeah.
Well, I think there. So there's often a joke when I'm talking to people about Anya, which is, I love consultants, you're human beings, but unfortunately you are guilty of this, which is that, consultant is often a person that looks at your watch and sends you an invoice to tell you the time. Whereas generally speaking, the people in the company that know what's going well and what's not going so well are, the people that work in that company 24/7, and that are confronted with that reality on the ground. So for us, it's ultimately about that. It's about, having like kind of a structured and systematic way to get this feedback up from the ground floor, have people look at that, and not just have like a consultant that's only sharing info with like the executive level, completely removed from daily realities, but bring it back to like first principles. Okay, what are these 7 areas? What are the considerations? What are the themes within the 7 areas? But just give like a simplified way to approach complexity. So it's not about saying the world is simple. What it is about saying is, how can we make complexity manageable, approachable, engageable, and then give people a way to express themselves within that framework? And then from that, build up from there, essentially.
Mo, I feel I should give you a stage and a microphone.
Well, thank you, Ben. I have to say, when I watched a couple of your talks online, I kind of quite self-identified with a number of things you were saying and the approach you were taking. So I feel like we have quite similar blooming personalities in that sense.
I did feel the same, actually. So I'm just getting to know you now, but after my chat with Jason, I did feel I've met a kindred spirit.
Thank you so much.
This is
Mo, it's your question next on money.
Yeah, I'm a free spirit, so I don't know if I'm going to go for money straight away or maybe money and growth. I'll just ask a freestyle question then in this final money and growth area. So, Ben, what?
You should grow money. Yes, growth. I agree. Grow money.
Grow money. Yes. Okay, that's it.
Does money grow in trees?
That's what.
Does money grow in trees?
Yes, they do, especially in forestry. Invest in forestry. Invest in growing a tree.
So I actually do have like a life plan in that sense about growth. So kind of my life plan is like make like totally unreasonable amounts of money in the tech sector, which is nicely scalable, and buy a completely kind of autonomous home in a mountain community in the south of France. Number one, so I can just like enjoy some holidays, like, you know, and be like, oh, let me go and enjoy like holiday with the goats, and also do like some international business on the Wi-Fi. Secondly, like, you know, insurance against any future international human crisis. And thirdly, just because nature is nice, you know. And so I guess if talking about growth, I mean, for me personally, I talk about money is kind of the second thing. For me, growth, the first thing is really just about growth and enjoyment of life and the people I get to hang around with. So, you know, I mean, Ben, what's your kind of definition of personal growth in that sense?
A personal growth.
Yeah.
A friend of mine, he'd hurt his arm, and he scratched a wound, and that he had a growth there.
Mo, that was a joke, by the way. So
Yes.
Do you mean mindset?
It could be anything. You know,
mindset, because I mean, personal growth is to do with all the things you've actually mentioned. So remove the systems aspect. It's to do with your growth in terms of relating and connecting with people. It's to do with your intellectual and spiritual growth. We mentioned spirituality a little earlier. It's to do with your financial growth, only because in this current world that we live in, finance helps you pay for things. It's to do with your health. So, you know, there's quite a lot of sheets on this. So anyway, that's what growth is to me. Making sure my health is good, my finances, I've got enough to deal with a crisis, like you said, with your mountaintop kind of dream life. So having reserves and having that freedom to just go around the world, have friends, and if you want to do business, do business. Business should only ever be about helping other people, and people thinking, oh, I'd like to pay Mo for helping me. In the old days, we used to barter, but that doesn't seem to work so well these days.
I like what you said about the bartering there, because I think definitely there is a certain art of the deal, right? And so one of the things that I learned a couple of years ago, which someone taught me, which I'm quite grateful for, is that, you know, there's always the money side of a deal, but you should actually always talk about the money side last. And what you should first understand is so let's say even I'm hiring someone, and let's say I'm partnering with someone, what I always aim to do is first to understand what are their non-financial goals? What are they looking to achieve in life? You know, how can I, through bringing them onto this project, not just pay them well, which is a given, but how can I help them through the work they're going to be doing with me and Anya achieve personal goals and really enjoy themselves? So if it's, for example, like a very senior technical person, it's not just about saying, dude, I'm going to make you the richest CTO in the world. It's about saying, hey, let's build a really awesome technology platform with incredible best practices where we really like have an alignment between tech and business. There's none of this bullshit, and we're like creating our approaches as we're going. And so really like looking at kind of what people really want, and then obviously figuring out the financials. I mean, just also a side anecdote, I get so frustrated by people who are like, oh, because you're having such a good quality of work and you're like having an impact on the world, this is an excuse to pay you minimum wage. So my philosophy is always make the money side so high it's not even a question, and then just really bring it back to fundamentals and what is going to make it that even when the person isn't even thinking about money anymore, that they're going to stay here and we're going to grow together. Preaching moment over. I'm just showing my
I want to come and work for you now.
Well, with me, not for me. It's
well, actually, that's really interesting that you say that, Mo. I'm often saying that. People say, oh, I'm doing this working for you, and I'm always saying with.
Yeah. No, but there's a really good, I mean, I hate to be the Steve Jobs quota guy, so, you know, but this one is quite relevant. There's a quote of his I really love, which is, we hire smart people not to tell them what to do, but so that tell us what to do. And so I'm actually often quite proactive with the people that I'm working with, even though I like founded the company, to say, okay, you know, what should we do? Okay, tell me, you know, like really make it that we're talking as peers, and that my role of director of the company is like, yes, on the corporate stuff, but ultimately I see myself as more of like a facilitator to bring out the best in people and empower them as much as possible.
You sound a bit like Edison, who surrounded himself with incredibly smart people. You remember he had only had about 3 or 4 months of education, and he just surrounded himself with very intelligent people who would invent things, and where he was good at was taking it to the market. But they were just very intelligent, and they knew stuff that he didn't know about, and they could create things for, I think he's got credited with the 2nd or 3rd most number of patents in the world. I think a Japanese person overtook him in terms of patents. So you sound exactly like that. I just want smart people, and they can create and innovate for me, and I'll help take it to the market to find people who love what you've built.
Well, actually, I'm kind of on the other side, because I'm more like, I love creating. So I do have to improve my skills on the growth and marketing side, hence my earlier questions to you. But for me, really what I enjoy, Ben, is about getting together with people with like different skill sets and ideas. Like, we'll share the same core values in terms of like honesty, transparency, radicality, all this stuff, but having people with really different life experiences and skills, and then going through the creative process, whether it's like building technology, whether it's figuring out the sales process, whether it's figuring out new systems. But that's what I really enjoy, is pluridisciplinarity and kind of bringing together this wealth of different people. And really, that's what wealth is now. It's not, I'm looking at my business plan for the next year. Basically, 95% of the money we'll invest is people.
Yeah, yeah. And I think you're right. Generation 597 or XYZ, whatever the generation is, they are more interested in how many people they can positively impact, rather than the actual money, and the money kind of follows. It's the same with your growth question. If you have sorted out your spiritual, your health, your mental, your intellectual, all those aspects of yourself, the money actually just follows. You've got all the connections. They just love Mo. When I see Mo, I mean, I get this sometimes with people coming up to me, and they've said to me, I just love what you do. Can you sell me something? I want to buy from you. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I don't have anything to sell to you. It's very kind of you to say this to me, but I don't. It's like, I don't like to just say, oh, you can buy this from me. I'd rather say, and go through this whole process. Okay, so tell me about yourself, and what is it you really want in life, and then think what I've got that can help them. But that takes me time as well. So I'd just rather just thank them and like. Yeah. So anyway, you sound like that kind of person who people just say, Mo, he's just such a lovely guy. I want to find out what he does, and if I can buy from him, buy from him.
He is, in my experience, and I think in many other people's, always to both be doing this podcast and working on design company philosophy and framework and so on, as well as Anya implementation of this and broader Anya company as well, and doing that in interdependent way, so that we're both independent, but we're choosing to work together because we're both constantly feeding off each other's thinking and ideas and contacts and knowledge and capabilities and all this stuff. Literally today, I feel like we've had a whole bunch of breakthroughs. Ben, I would really love to just thank you really, really from the bottom of my heart for joining yet again for this podcast this time. Please tell the listeners, where they can find you. We'll link your TEDx talk on social magnetism, which is absolutely essential for people to view, and more of the kind of concrete practicalities around this in terms of how to really interact with people. I think more than ever today, we need more ability to connect with people, especially that everyone's 2 meters away. So tell the listeners where they can find more about you, and what they can buy from you, if anything.
Sure. So if you want to follow my Instagram, it's Ben Chai Official. I have somebody who manages that. So if you could contact me on Instagram, it might be like, you might get a response from me 2 weeks later or something. If you want a more immediate response, connect with me on LinkedIn. which is just LinkedIn, and find someone who looks like the photograph, or if Jason puts this interview in his YouTube, find someone who has a photograph that looks like me on LinkedIn.
Use AI. We'll link you all up
Yeah.
to LinkedIn and Instagram and the TEDx talk. So
That's
thank you very
right.
much, Ben. Really appreciate you coming on, and stay connected with us. You know, I feel we could talk more, you know, more practically as well.